Recurring with Breakfast by Radar DeBoard. Guest narrator, Phoenix Fire, Queen of Panic, Silver Stories.
Ernesto rubbed his hands together in anticipation as the waitress placed the plate of food before him.
So what happened, man?
Jack asked from the other side of the booth. Ernesto made a blatant, loud coughing noise to signal to Jack that he wasn't going to finish his story in front of the waitress. The middle-aged employee asked,
"Is there anything else I can get you?"
Nah, we're good, thank you.
Jack answered almost immediately. The waitress turned around and hurriedly walked away, muttering something under her breath. Ernesto greedily picked up one of his sausages and bit it in half. He looked up to see Jack staring at him with a look of anticipation as Ernesto had still not finished his story. Ernesto, with a mouthful of sausage, continued.
Sorry. So, Denise found out about Maria and almost destroyed me with a bat.
Jack stammered out.
What do you mean by almost destroyed you with a bat? How did she accomplish that?
Ernesto took a quick swig of his orange juice.
She bamboozled me, man. She made it seem like I didn't know anything and invited me over, but as soon as I got there, she came out swinging. Wow.
Jack shook his head in absolute disbelief. Ernesto chuckled.
If I wouldn't have ducked, I would have been in the ground right now.
Jack took a bite of his meat lover's omelet while Ernesto took a small sip of his juice. Ernesto cleared his throat.
Jack, It's been a while since I've seen you. It's even been longer since we come to Excellent for breakfast,
he said while looking around the corner. Jack frowned at him with a puzzled look on his face.
And?
Ernesto sighed.
And you normally take me here if you need something from me.
Jack shook his head.
No, I don't need anything.
Ernesto put up his hand to stop him.
Hey, it's fine, man. I'm always willing to help you, especially when Excellent is involved.
Jack let out a small chuckle as Ernesto grabbed the ketchup that had been placed on the side of their booth that was touching the wall.
Well,
Jack began to say, but trailed off in search of the right words. Ernesto took the ketchup bottle, waiting for Jack to continue his thought. Jack placed both hands on the table and leaned in towards Ernesto. In a low voice, he said,
I've been having a dream.
Ernesto couldn't keep from letting out a scoff.
A dream?
He brought his gaze up from his meal to give a judgmental look to Jack.
So you just want to talk about your dreams, dude?
Jack made eye contact with Ernesto, with a look of pure seriousness in his eyes, as he said,
Not dreams, dude. A single dream. A recurring one. I've been having it for the past few weeks now.
Ernesto opened the bottle and squirted out a large glob of ketchup that splattered on top of his hash browns, almost enveloping them. He sighed.
Well, I don't know how I can help with that, dude. I'm not a psychiatrist or anything.
Jack, in a pleading tone, said,
Look, I just need you to listen to me. I've been having this freaky dream all the time. I don't want to go to sleep anymore because I know I'm going to have it. Just listen to me and tell me if you think I'm going crazy or not.
Ernesto sat there silently for a moment before picking up a big bite of hash brown and shoveling it into his mouth. After a moment of chewing, he mumbled,
All right, man. Hit me with what you got.
Jack took in a deep breath and began.
Well, the dream starts with me standing still in this strange black space. I can't see anything, except for my hands. It kind of feels like when you go through an old memory and you can't quite remember everything. Whatever you don't remember is just a blank thing, like it never existed.
All right, I get what you mean, dude.
Ernesto interrupted with a mouthful of bacon. Jack thought for a moment where he was before continuing.
Right. Sorry. So then this crazy beeping noise sounds. It's so loud and annoying that I try. No, I have to move away from it. But it doesn't matter how far away I move. Never gets any quieter.
Jack took a quick sip of his milk before he continued.
So, regardless of how long I try to run away from the noise, eventually, I start moving towards the sound. Then, as the beeping noise gets louder, I start to see this weird haze appear before my eyes.
Ernesto took another bite of his sausage and asked,
Wait, I thought you said it was completely black. How can you see the haze if it's completely black?
Jack shook his head.
I can't really explain it. It's like there's smoke all around me, and it's starting to get in the way of me seeing. Even though everything is pitch black, I can tell that this haze is obscuring my vision.
Jack paused to take a minuscule bite of his meat lover's omelet, even though he wasn't really in the mood to eat anymore.
This is where the dream gets really creepy.
Ernesto sat a bit forward as Jack had piqued his interest with his last comment. Ernesto still continued to eat, but he now had less of a focus on his meal. Jack looked directly at Ernesto with an intense gaze before continuing.
So I wander through this thick smoke. I can barely see anything until this man appears just a few feet in front of me. He stands to the side and gestures forward, like he's guiding me through a gate or something.
Jack expected Ernesto to seem shocked, but he just stared at his friend with a look of confusion. Ernesto finally broke the silence between them.
So, the dream is freaking out because some guy is trying to get you through some invisible gate?
Jack reached his hand towards Ernesto.
He's got hooks, man.
Ernesto gave Jack a puzzled look.
He what?
Jack slammed his hand down on the table.
The guy gesturing for me to go through the invisible door. The guy has hooks for hands. Well, at least for his left hand, anyway. That's the one showing me where to go.
Ernesto sat back and started eating his hash browns again.
So, this happened in your dream. You encounter some guy in some smoke with a hook for a hand?
Ernesto mumbled out with a mouthful of food. Jack shook his head furiously as he responded in an irritated tone.
There's more that happens. Now, I haven't even gotten to the important part yet, so you could just shut up for a second.
Ernesto was taken aback by the sudden anger that came from Jack. Ernesto shrunk a bit in his seat as he looked at Jack to finish his story.
Once I go through the invisible gateway, something happens.
Jack paused. His hands began to lightly tremble as he tried to find the words.
It's like a rug is being pulled out from underneath me. 1 second I'm walking, and then the next, I'm landing on my back. I feel the air rush out of me and I'm in too much shock to move.
Ernesto noticed one of Jack's hands had started to shake a bit. Jack saw Ernesto looking at it and quickly drew his hand under the table.
Then I hear this loud roar.
Jack continued.
But it's not like an animal roar. I can't put my finger on what it is, because the roar only lasts a few seconds.
He quickly added.
I know I've heard it somewhere before, I just can't think of where.
Jack began to stutter a bit as the words stumbled out.
Then I feel this horrible pain across my stomach. I've had dreams where it feels like I'm in pain, but it's never been like this. I don't even think I've ever felt anything as bad as in this dream. It's so bad that I can't even feel my feet, and I know that means something really bad.
Jack paused for a moment to take another sip of his drink, while Ernesto pushed his food to the side. Ernesto wouldn't admit it out loud, but he was intrigued by Jack's dream. Jack let out a deep sigh as he continued in a trembling voice.
So, as I'm lying there in this excruciating pain, just staring up at the empty blackness above me, well, that's when you suddenly show up.
What, me?
Ernesto said in surprise as he gestured at himself. Jack replied with a simple nod of his head, and he shakily spoke.
You stand over me and you scream something. I don't really know what, but you seem really shook over what's happening. You see, You see, I can't hear you at all, but I can tell that you're screaming because of how your face looks. It always takes me a few seconds after I realize that I can't hear you for me to realize I can't hear anything. I'm completely deaf, and that scares me more than anything. Of course, it doesn't last long because I always wake right up after that.
Jack sat back and let out a long sigh as he looked at Ernesto to respond. Ernesto quietly inquired.
So that's how your dream ends?
Jack simply nodded his head in response. The two sat there in silence for several moments. Ernesto finally took a deep breath and said,
I can understand how this will mess you up, man. I wouldn't want to have a dream like that.
He hesitated for a moment as Jack waited for him to continue. Ernesto shook his head.
But hey, it's just a dream, man. There's nothing to worry about. Yeah, it's a pretty weird one, but it's not like it's gonna happen to you or anything.
Jack looked down at his unfinished food and nodded his head.
Yeah, you know, you're right, man. I shouldn't really let it get to me.
Ernesto reached across the table and put a hand on his shoulder.
It's totally okay, dude. We've all had dreams like that. You just gotta let it go.
Jack sat there for a moment, letting Ernesto's hand rest on his shoulder. Finally, he looked at Ernesto with a faint smile. Ernesto withdrew his hand from Jack's shoulder and returned it to his side of the table.
Hey, thanks for listening to me, man.
Jack slowly said, with a twinge of relief in his voice.
I guess I just needed to get it out there. I think I feel better now.
Ernesto took a sip of his drink.
That's good to hear, man. I'm glad I could help you out with it.
Jack pulled out his wallet and fiddled in it for a moment before slamming $30 down on the table.
Well, I'm gonna head out,
Jack said, standing up.
I wish I could hang out a bit longer, but I've got work in an hour.
Oh, thanks for the meal.
Ernesto said as Jack put on his coat.
No problem, man.
Jack smiled.
It's the least I could do after forcing you to listen to me go crazy.
Ernesto and Jack both gave a few semi-sincere laughs at the comment before the awkwardness of the situation quickly silenced them both.
I'll see you around,
Jack shouted as he moved towards the exit. Ernesto gave him a wave goodbye with his left hand as his right went for his coat. A sudden, loud beeping snapped Ernesto's attention away from his coat and towards the source of the noise. He could see a layer of smoke coming from the kitchen and floating right in front of the entrance door. Ernesto looked up at the ceiling to find that the smoke detector was going off was the source of the sound. He let out a sigh of annoyance and put on his coat. He looked to see Jack about to walk out of the front door and noticed it was being held open for him. Ernesto watched as Jack exited and the man who had been holding the door entered. Ernesto felt a slight twinge of panic as he saw the man walk in with a hook where his left hand should be.
It's just a coincidence,
Ernesto muttered to himself. Quickly, he scrambled out of the booth and began anxiously moving towards the restaurant's exit. He kept his gaze fixed on Jack walking across the parking lot and onto the sidewalk. Ernesto could see Jack stop at the street and look both ways before stepping down off the sidewalk.
He must have walked here,
Ernesto thought as he exited the restaurant. He saw Jack starting to slip and then fall onto his back. Ernesto began to run across the parking lot at a full sprint towards Jack. He looked down the street to see a semi making its way towards Jack. That's when he heard the semi honk its horn, blaring the loud noise as if that would make Jack move. Due to the size of the vehicle, Ernesto knew the semi wouldn't be able to stop in time. He looked to see Jack's head start to appear from below the sidewalk, just before the semi ran over the spot where Jack just was. Ernesto leaped off the sidewalk and ran into the street screaming Jack's name.
Jack! Jack! Jack!
He could see his friend laying there with his hands and head twitching in strange, jerking motions.
Jesus Christ! Are you okay?
He screamed at Jack. Ernesto fell to his knees right beside Jack and grabbed a hold of his friend's twitching left hand. His eyes quickly scanned Jack's body to assess the damage that had been done. He could see the clear indentation of tire tracks across his friend's stomach. The extreme weight of the truck had flattened Jack's entire abdominal region. It created a sudden dip in Jack's body, and Ernesto had to try his hardest not to vomit on the spot. The small bits of broken rib that poked out of the sides of Jack did nothing to help the queasy feeling inside of him. Ernesto could sense several people running up around him and Jack, so he screamed,
"Call 911! Call him right now!"
He felt Jack squeeze his hand, and Ernesto looked down at Jack. Ernesto could see a look of pure horror mixed with agonizing pain spread across his friend's face.
We're gonna get you to the hospital. It's gonna be okay, man. You're gonna be okay.
Ernesto whimpered as he frantically tried to reassure Jack that it was going to be all right. He could see tears starting to roll down Jack's face as his friend tried to say something. Ernesto leaned over to hear what Jack said, desperately trying to gasp out. Through stuttered words, Jack quietly said,
I can't hear you. I can't hear anything.
Ernesto raised his head and stared down at Jack, while his broken friend cried out,
I can't hear anything. Oh, God. I can't hear anything. The dream was real. It was real.